Hello, once again. Welcome back to the HIN show. Today, I've got another fantastic guest for you, and he's come at a perfect time. This is an old friend of ours, Giovanni Stefano, also known as the Devil's Advocate. We've got a lot of respect for this man. We'll leave the links to his incredible work. As always, please check it out and get involved with what he's doing. Keep up to date with him. He's an Italian lawyer, but not only that, he's a man who's actually worked with world leaders. He's currently working with His Excellency President Putin. And we're just going to pass it over to you, Giovanni. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. Buongiorno, buongiorno, buongiorno.
We take you on to what we're really going to discuss today, if you don't mind. And this is the special operations between Ukraine and Russia. Now, you are heavily involved with this, with the ultimate goal is peace. Now, please could you update our viewers and listeners as to how you're progressing in this mission?
Well, you have to remember that if you want peace, you have to be ready for war. And by golly gosh, Russia is ready for war. They took this decision, which incidentally has lasted longer than the Second World War. There, so it's not something that's taken lightly. There, the position is, and the major disputes, whether anyone wishes to believe it or not, are not over territories or over who owns what, who's got what, who's what there, because obviously Zelensky has done a lot of things he shouldn't have done. Maybe even the Russian Federation has gone, squashed an ant with an elephant foot. That was probably not necessary in its full force there, probably there. But it's all about money. It's all about funding. Who's going to repair? Remember, the whole world is 3,000 years of its known existence. We've not had a single flipping day where there's been peace. Every single, we've not had a single year, a day where there's been peace in the world. It's within the nature of man. And, I've lived through 3 civil wars, obviously the situation in the Balkans there. They're all friends now after 20 years. And you ask yourself the question, what's the point of it all? So what's at stake here now is who's going to lend who to what. After the Second World War, remember, Britain is still paying for its First World War debts to America. America gave it a lot of ships that were no use to them. I mean, they were very smart there. They're still paying. And this will be exactly the same. Ukraine will be rebuilt. Parts of Russia will also that. The sanctions, and it will all come. It may take a year, may take a month, may take a day. Zelensky is very welcome in Moscow, providing he has something to say and something that can be bound. One of the situations that has been alarming, to many people is, the attempted murder of a Ukraine businessman in Monaco, where I'm resident there. And lo and behold, where do we find the perpetrator with 2 bullets in her head in Kiev? Shot by a member of the security services and a policeman there. Now, I wonder, there's a flipping surprise, for you there. What was she doing in Kiev? So, but yet no one talks about that. Had that person been found in Moscow or St. Petersburg or in Siberia with 2 bullets in her head, the whole press would have said, look, this is Putin that's done this, that again. But something is terribly untoward. And we, as residents in Monaco, and I'm one of them there, that thought that we were safe. Remember, in Monaco, 7 citizens, 1 police officer. There's about 7,000 permanent residents who actually live in Monaco, 34,000 in total around the world, but only 7,000 who actually sleep the night there. And it is worrying because this, it could be collateral damage. Can happen to anyone there. You've still got 17 fellow Ukrainian business people there in Monaco with super yachts that wonder where that money came from and everything. No one questions those. But if there's a Russian businessman in Monaco, he's got the money, he's sanctioned, is this, it's about time that, the European Union and the world got real. Number one, Ukraine and Russia are effectively brothers. It is effectively a similar, language there that binds them, effectively, more or less there. When families fall out, mind your own flipping business, other people, third parties. Let them get on with it. Let them do what they've got to do. Don't take sides. Because if you take sides with husband and wife, brother and sister,
Mm.
son and father, all you get is trouble with a capital T. And
So,
if the European Union had minded its own business, and
yeah.
America's minded its own business.
Well, the Minsk agreement was breached. The 2014 Minsk agreement was breached, and it always had on there that the Russia will never allow Ukraine to have NATO membership. And this goes back to the breakup of the USSR, that NATO
Yes.
would never be able to take one of the former USSR states, and it has, of course, it's got them all under their wing. The Russians have felt, and when you look at the map and you see the expansion, Giovanni, since the Glasnost period and the breakup of the USSR, you see the surrounding tactic by NATO off Russia, where you have Finland, you have Sweden, Poland, of course.
We
There are
don't
20.
need NATO, Marcus. We don't. We needed NATO after the Second World War. It's
Sure.
flipping heck. I mean, it's 80 bloody years now since that war was ended. We don't need what we do need, if with a big if, sottolineando sec, as
Mm.
Mina sang there, if we are to maintain a European Union of more than 20 states there, we need a European army. Now that could easily, that's a different story. America's got its army, it's 50, more than 50 states there. Russia has its army, that's got different states. European Union, but we don't need NATO. It is not necessary anymore. It needs to be disbanded, and it will be disbanded because Trump will get
Mm.
the earache on all of that nonsense. He's already like criticized them for not helping him out when he
Sure.
needed help, there in Iran, which is another story, incidentally,
It's a big story.
also to do with money. Because remember well, where have you seen before, Marcus, the
Mm.
title Memorandum of Understanding? Who have you seen that come from?
Yourself.
That's right.
Yourself.
That's part, or consensus ad idem.
Uh,
They're phrases that I use and I've advised on.
Non-aggression. Remember, we spoke about this years ago before
The
Boris
non-aggression
Johnson
pact. That's right.
put
That
his
all
foot
of
in.
that was
He scuppered the
incorporated.
deal. He scuppered the
Uh,
deal, a peace deal in 2022. We spoke about it.
but part of the memorandum of understanding between Iran and the United States was $300 billion of reparation, $300 billion of
Yeah,
redevelopment. All the other stuff was by the by. Didn't really give a damn about that. The only thing that people were interested in, and who's going to be the favorite, who are going to be the contractors that rebuild the buildings, who's going to do that, who's going to do the other. You think they really give?
no,
Belgium is about to have nuclear weapons. Did you know Belgium
yeah.
is about to have? It's almost done a nuclear bomb. No, I
Well,
don't see anyone invading Belgium.
just a second. Where are we on the frozen Russian funds that Keir Starmer, who's now out on his backside, as we both predicted, we
Quite rightly so.
joke of a man. Yeah, quite rightly so. Well, as you correctly said, you wouldn't let him defend a parking ticket.
Parking ticket.
He's so feckless and bloody useless. But where are we on the frozen Russian funds that Keir Starmer and Monsieur Macron said that we were going to use to help fight against the Russians? Because according to President Trump, it doesn't look like those funds are going to be touched.
Well, who do you think advised on that issue to the Russian Federation there?
Not.
Whilst there is the possibility of having sanctions and imposing an embargo or restraint order or an injunction, call it whatever you want to call it, there, that is potentially lawful. You can do that, providing certain criteria is found. What you cannot do is you cannot touch that or use that for other purposes. That goes outside the injunctory relief system that operates in most democratic countries. It certainly operates in America, certainly operates in Italy, and certainly operates in the United Kingdom. You can have, if you're a drug dealer and you have your assets, you have an injunction placed upon you there. They can't, until you're convicted and that conviction is final there, they can't touch that money. Then they'll do a proceeds of crime on you there. Now, we have this situation many years ago with what they call a Moravia injunction on Berlusconi's companies in London, which Mr. Mills, God rest his soul, was the lawyer, together with myself. I assisted in that, gave the
Wow.
appropriate advice there. And, obviously, whilst an injunction can be upheld, what you can't do is you can't flip and steal the money from that injunction there. So that's going nowhere, rest assured. And in any case, what have I advised the Russian government is that if you have billions of dollars under injunctory relief, no problem, use yen, use the ruble for, that, because that's your home. China will never impose sanctions, will never have injunctory relief, and you won't do it on yourself either. So if people pay in rubles, pay in yen, pay in any currency that's not part of that, that's how you overcome.
So where do you see this going then, Giovanni? Where do you see this stalemate going? Because from reports that we're getting, not from the mainstream media, but from people on the ground, that the Russians are taking more and more territory. They could, if they wanted to, in all honesty, take the whole of Ukraine if they had the will to do it. It'd be a bloody battle. But where do you see this coming to an end?
Many years ago, many years ago, I was accused of colpo di Stato, having a coup d'etat in Italy, together with a number of famous politicians, Andreotti, Fassi, that we were all accused of having a coup d'etat. You know what my defense was? Who the hell wants a bankrupt country? I want a country that's like, and I was acquitted. That. So, who wants Ukraine? Ukraine is a burden to the Russian Federation. All they want is to secure the Russian element there, to make sure that they are not prejudiced. Because what Zelensky has done, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, he's made his own decision. I mean, but just stop for one moment and think: could you have Mr. Bean as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? I mean, like, that's the equivalent that you have.
Well, you had
in
Boris.
Ukraine. Well, we had him, yeah, I suppose, and another flipping comedian there that ruined that. It's going nowhere. If they wanted to, they could use limited nuclear capabilities,
Right.
which I had to deliver an advice to the Russian Federation and the Americans as well there, that it is lawful to use limited nuclear capabilities, providing certain criteria are met. They haven't done that yet, and I don't think that they will, but lawfully they can adopt that method if they wanted to there, thanks to the American precedent of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Absolutely, and there's a misconception about Article 5 of the NATO agreement, that this is the mandatory position if any one nation or partner is attacked, or that they'll automatically retaliate. But this is absolute bollocks, because it's at the discretion of the holder of the missiles. And in America's case, they have missiles in all over the place. In Italy, of
Italy
course,
refused, and quite rightly so. Giorgio Meloni was right. So was, in this case, I supported Starmer. He was absolutely correct in not allowing, although he did allow certain usage for certain reconnaissance and certain administrative purposes. But, he was not going to, unlike the attack on Serbia, Italy would not let its bases be used for an attack on Iran there. And that's a seriously misconceived situation, because Iran are not Arabs. The Persian Empire. I mean, America's 250 years old. The door on the stable in my house in Petrilla di Fernina is 500 years old. Our church is 1,800 years old. The actual ring where we used to keep our donkey, Peppino, is 300 years old.
God bless
I mean, that just gives you, a sort of.
But I'm with you on the European army, but I would use the European army to actually defend Europe. And I defend Europe from defend Europe, not from the Russians, who you've established are next to, they're no threat at this point in time, because ideologically they're probably more aligned with the peoples of Europe than our own governments. They're not for net zero. They're not for
Russia
DEI.
has never. Let's look at this. Napoleon attacked Russia. The Germans attacked Russia in the 15th century, an attack on Russia. Russia has never attacked anybody. And let me make this statement here and now on behalf of the Russian Federation there, which I know firsthand, from the foreign minister. Russia has no interest whatsoever in attacking any country outside, the Russian Federation there. They have no interest in Poland, no interest in Sweden, no interest in Finland, have no interest in attacking anybody unless they are attacked by that country, and
And
that is
and
the position.
they see that the breaching of the Minsk agreement and chemical weapons labs being placed in the Donbass as an act of war. They see that as an act of war, just as the
Quite
Americans would
rightly
see
so.
nuclear weapons on, as this. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but as the Americans would see missiles being placed in on the borders of Mexico, or the Brits would, if the French put nuclear weapons pointing us, we would be pissed off and want to retaliate.
Well, can someone answer me on what basis? It's only come to light recently. I mean, I've seen the information. Belgium is almost, almost completed a nuclear bomb. The facility has Belgium. Now, no one knew about this. No one knew they were even planning.
Well,
I mean, I went to, I was based in Brussels there for a while, and I did not like it personally. I was there, as the in the European Commission on behalf of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, Milosevic. There, I didn't like. It was his representative. I didn't like it there at all. There, but who the hell would ever have thought that under Europe, so it's the capital of Europe, Belgium, supposedly, without anyone knowing and any information to anyone, that they have a nuclear ready for a nuclear bomb? That to me is more
well,
dangerous.
I'll put it to you that there's something doing more damage than a nuclear bomb in Belgium, and that is mass, unlimited, unfettered immigration. You also have an Islamic extremist group. Now, you and I both stand against and repudiate all violence as Italians.
Yes,
And
Article
we,
11 of our
but
constitution.
and extremists, as you've pointed out to me, there's been Christian extremists, Catholic extremists, but right now, facing Europe is an existential threat to Christianity, to Catholicism, and also to the women and children of this country. In the UK, you're seeing all these protests outside of the accommodation that's been allowed for these people. Many of them will take your point as well. They will house, clothe, and feed every single member of the world once their own people are taken care of.
That's
But
right.
Giovanni, what do you suggest then that the Europeans do to stop
Well,
this? What are the European Union doing to stop this mass invasion that's culling culturally, economically, socially our beautiful Europe?
nothing. They're doing the square root of sweet Fanny Bloody Adams, and that's the problem. That my party, il Partito Nazionale Italiana, and many other parties in the European Union, we are all for immigration. We have
Sure.
no problem on embargoing immigration, but it has to be disclosed and lawful and for a specific purpose. If it can add, you know, I see that in 100 years' time, I won't be here I mean, mercifully, there will come a period in the lifetime of humanity that when you are born, you will be given a death date.
Hmm.
On that day, they will say, based upon the computer, the algorithms, based upon that, and
Sure.
they will also tell you where you can live. They will have that. That's in 100 years' time. Now, I'm not being science fiction because I don't even like SD Clark,
Sure.
whatever his name is, there on that. But that's what I predict, and it's time that we now got strict on that. First of all, work for Italians, and then anyone else that's left over. Work for the British, work for British citizens. In, I mean, I don't know if you can remember. No, you're too young. But Railbrook shirts for men, Railbrook shirts for men. I mean, you know, they were built,
Yeah.
in the United Kingdom,
Sure.
there, and the biggest problem is that in most cities in central England, the language is Urdu. It is no
Yeah.
longer
Yeah.
English. And
Most
that,
popular
okay,
name is Mohammed.
that's right. And you can say the same in Italy. I mean, in the north of Italy, in
Yeah,
Bolzano,
that's
in Trentino, Alto Adige, that they have a German language as well as Italian. But it
but the
becomes a
Germans
problem.
assimilate. The Germans assimilate like the Italians assimilated when they came to Scotland. The Italians blended in. The Italians opened restaurants. They had tailor shops. They were part of the community.
Look at
They
you.
embraced their
Look
community.
at your family. what they did.
exactly.
They didn't come as scrounging on the dole, even
No,
if the dole
no, they got
exists. They
nothing.
came and rolled their sleeves up.
Sure.
Grandfather, Boxer
He was a
realised
tailor.
that he had a better chance, in the UK than he did there, and he got on with it. He didn't ask for funding from the state. He didn't ask for anything subsidised mortgage. He didn't ask for subsidised school meals.
Child benefits, three cap, four cap. There was nothing. Absolute niente. Nothing. And the Italians, lest we forget, I don't want to go on about it, but they were put in internment camps in Scotland. Their businesses were closed. They were treated like animals. And they
That's
never
correct.
complained. They just waited till the war was over. They went back out into the communities and they started again. Where's their reparations? Nothing.
Exactly.
They were treated
That
like
may be
animals, like
something I
pigs.
may take up now. You've given me an idea that to piss off bloody Starmer and that. No,
Oh,
but
Giovanni, you'd have a
you
case. You'd have a case because of the David Lammys of this world, of someone I'm sure you might have crossed paths with. Maybe you haven't. David Lammy,
how he
the
managed to get a law degree, heaven only knows, because he knows the square root of zilch
oh, he's a
on law.
Fabian. He's in the Fabian Society, the
Oh
the the,
God,
the communist class of the Labour Party, like new Prime Minister Andy Burnham. What a joke! What an absolute joke! But all these people that we're talking about that want to do something, whether it be the ADF in Germany. I know you don't rate them that much, but whether it be Nigel Farage, they're the closest semblance to parties that are trying to control their borders, trying to get rid of DEI, promote Christianity, promote
that's
Catholicism.
right. You have two choices. You either control your borders or open them for everybody. In other words, like the United States of America, which is what Europe has tried to do, but many countries didn't want it there. You can go from one place, from Estonia to southern Italy, without even going through one passport control and letting anyone in. But the Americans now have stopped people coming in. I
Yes.
mean, whatever you can say about Trump, not a single illegal immigrant,
Yeah.
has come through, because he's made it crystal clear that there is a shoot to kill policy. Now, I don't advocate that. I
No,
do not advocate that. But hell's bells,
it works.
that with 20 million people that were undocumented, when you had 2 million children that can't read or write in America, where you have people who don't know
And they're
their
sex
history.
trafficked. Giovanni, these are children that are being sex trafficked. There are 400,000 children missing in America through sex
It's
trafficking. And this brings back Ukraine. Ukraine is the center of sex trafficking of little kids, little children. We're not talking about female adults or male adults.
I
Although
totally agree.
The Starmer rent boy case was very interesting. I'm sure you had your eye on that.
I did, but it wasn't publicised because, of course, it was against the government.
Yeah,
Then
there was a memo 618.
Memo 618, you are quite correct. And my old friend Jeremy Johnson, who's now a High Court judge, is the most criticised judge in the United Kingdom there. One day we will have a real story, because he's a good friend of mine there, and I'm surprised as to what he's done. But I'm not really surprised, because I knew what he was like deep down anyway. Remember, I published a list some years ago of the judiciary that were part of MI6, that were that worked for the security services and could be used and operated by the British government at will, not only including Memo 618, but other instructions that came. Now, those judges have sort of withered away with time. But each one that withers away, there's another one that replaces. And you look at the
Yeah,
decisions of you got a barrister that was struck off by the Bar Council
yeah.
and reinstated by Jeremy Johnson there, because he lied about lied about having studying medicine, and he said, well, he's only a small lie. I mean, so
Yeah.
it's okay to have a small lie, like you studied at Oxford and you didn't, but it's not.
It's a
You know,
rounding error. It's a rounding error in accountancy
yeah,
terms.
Neo
It's
Dio Santo. All I
exactly, it's a scintilla. But people don't even know about investigatory powers tribunal. People are
That's
unaware
right.
that there's
There's a
another.
KC that's responsible, that you can make application. If you have your phone intercepted or that. I personally, I was one of the first people that was contacted by Mark Lewis, who was the solicitor, about being hacked by the old News of the World and that. I said, I don't give a damn. I said, I'd let them have that anyway, because I was the second most quoted lawyer in the United Kingdom. So if they want to hack my phone and get that, I'll even give them my phone. They can use that. I don't have any problem. If you have nothing to hide, and I
Sure.
have nothing to hide there. And
No.
remember, hacking of a phone and hacking and intercepts
Yeah.
can be exculpatory. Let me tell you about exculpatory evidence. Milosevic, it was difficult to indict him on having killing people outside, the race of the Yugoslav. He didn't kill Muslims or anything. Why? Because there were 16,000 intercepts. Not on a single one did he ever order the Muslims to be killed, or that they're not a single one. Now that's thanks to GCHQ that had intercepted his phone, and that we got those tapes down. We put that, so they couldn't indict him,
Yeah.
on genocide there, because there was no evidence. In fact, the evidence, and it appeared in one small paragraph in the Sunday Times, written by David Lepard, a friend of mine, one of the journalists.
Well, and he died in custody, waiting trial in The Hague under very
Under very dodgy.
dubious circumstances. It reminds me a bit of Mr. Epstein and his hanging
Well,
himself.
anyone that has anything to say that could be a danger to the state needs to
Yeah.
die. I'm
Well,
surprised that I survived it, but I mean,
never,
here I am.
never believe anything, dear boy, until it's been officially denied.
ABC of life. Accept nothing, believe F all, and check everything. ABC. That we part on. That's that. Accept nothing, believe
Okay.
F all, and check everything. If you follow that criteria, you won't go wrong.
Okay. Look, there's so many rabbit holes we could go down today, but we'll leave it there. A fantastic experience again with yourself, a man like no other with an incredible backstory, a musician as well, a composer, an artist in his own right, and a great sense of humour, a gentleman. We love and respect. Giovanni, thank you very much for coming back onto HIN Show, sir.
Thank you, and God bless.